the week.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Jocelyn Kozak. Weather is helping crews in Jasper battle fires today, but the damage so far is staggering. The CBC Sam Sampson is just outside the fire zone in Hinton.
You can't get very close to Jasper National Park at all, never mind the town itself. It's still not a safe situation. But let's take a look at the damage inside the town of Jasper. Parks Canada said most of the damage was on the west side, specifically southwest of Miette Avenue. And then they said the east side of town seemed to be spared significant damage. That doesn't mean that there's no damage at all, but just that the worst is on more the south side of the area. We take a look at the fire that's still affecting the national park. Parks Canada just released a preliminary map saying that the fire is now 36,000 hectares. Initially, there were 2 fires threatening the town. Those merged together, actually, and now we're looking at a complex of fires. We don't know still how many exactly structures have been damaged or burned down. Parks Canada says it's too early at this time to really get an exact number, so we're still standing by for that information.
That's Sam Sampson reporting from Hinton. And an out-of-control wildfire burning northwest of Cochrane has grown slightly. As of yesterday, that fire was around 83 hectares and was located 25 kilometers from Water Valley. Residents in the area surrounding the municipal district of Bighorn are now under an evacuation order. Those in the immediate area were ordered to evacuate Tuesday evening. Several roads in the area are closed and a reception centre remains open at the Water Valley Community Hall. The heat across southern Alberta is drying out crops, setting the stage for a new grass fire season. That means hundreds of volunteer fire crews are checking pagers and getting ready for a call. The CBC's Elise Stolte has more.
Tabor MD Fire Chief Nathan Cote has 80 volunteers prepped and ready to go. They're watching weather reports closely. When the call comes in, they'll need to go quick because grass fires can move faster than 100 kilometers an hour.
Our trucks have what we call a pump and roll capability where we can drive along the side using a monitor and spraying it out, but sometimes it can move faster than what our trucks can move.
Cote says the wall of flames can reach up to 6 meters high if the grass is long and will wreak havoc on any farm or ranch in the way. Southern Alberta has had good moisture this spring, but they're starting to dry out in Cypress County too. Fire Chief Jason Litton says most grass fires happen along highways.
The leading cause is improperly discarded cigarette butts and equipment that fails, like campers, trucks that have chains that are too long that drag against the road and create the sparks.
Linton is asking everyone to watch out for new fire bans. Elise Stolte, CBC News, Calgary.
Scotiabank customers who expected to be paid today haven't been, but it's not their employer's fault. As Paula DeHatchik tells us, Scotiabank says its computer system is on the fritz.
Scotiabank customer Meg Watson was expecting to see her paycheck in her account this morning, but it wasn't there.
My first feeling is like, oh no. You know, you get that stomach falling out.
She's not the only one. Down Detector, an online outage tracker, shows that users started experiencing problems early Friday morning. By 9:51 Eastern Time, nearly 4,800 users had reported a problem. Scotiabank says it's dealing with a technical issue, and some inbound payments, like checks and direct deposits, aren't being applied to customer accounts.
It's frustrating for sure.
The bank says it's trying to resolve the problem as fast as possible, and that customers will be refunded for any fees they incur as a result of the outage. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Toronto.
Local breakers and dance studios in Calgary are hoping the inclusion of breaking at the Olympics could be a big boost for local fans. Breaking combines art, dance, acrobatic moves, and hip-hop. Josiah Go has been doing it for the last 17 years. He says the Olympics is a huge platform and could help create a whole new generation of Canadian breakers.
Now that it's in the Olympics, it's just another avenue for B-boys to get out there. It means that, you know, I can share with my students that this is a level that you could get to. This is a goal that you could possibly achieve if you work hard enough.
The Olympic B-boys and B-girls prepare to battle it out on the dance floor in Paris starting August 9th. And CBC is Canada's Olympic network for Paris 2024. You can watch the opening ceremony on CBC Television, News Network, GEM, or our dedicated website. And that is your CBC News.
Hello, I'm Jim Brown in Calgary, and for the next 2 hours, we will be bringing you live programming dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper. We'll have information for you if you have been evacuated. We'll get the latest from our reporters near the park, and we will hear from officials from all 3 levels of government. We'd also like to hear from you. We'd like to know what your thoughts are about what happened in Jasper. How are you feeling about the situation? If you have any stories or memories about times you've spent in Jasper, we'd like to hear those as well. The number to call, if you'd like to join us on the air, is 1-866-468-4422. And our email address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. Now, in our second hour today, I will be joined by a historian who's written extensively on the history of Jasper National Park. We'll be talking about the significance of that special part of the province, and we look forward to having you join us in that conversation. But before we get there, we're going to spend this hour giving you the very latest news on the situation. We'll be joined by evacuees and experts to talk about what's happened and about what's next. So once again, if you'd like to join us, the number is 1-866-468-4422. Our email address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. Now let's start things off with the very latest from the area of the fire. CBC reporter Madeline Cummings has been covering this story for us all week, and she joins me now from Hinton. Good morning, Madeline.
Good morning, Jim.
So what is the very latest?
Okay, so I am standing right outside the Incident Command Center in Hinton. It's by the Crestwood Hotel, and I'm in a group of about 15, 20 journalists, photographers, standing outside of the center. Premier Danielle Smith just arrived a few minutes ago. She got out of her car, walked up into a trailer that's been set up, says Mobile Command Center, Calgary Emergency Management Agency. So she's going to be getting a briefing right now about the latest on the fire, and then she's expected to talk to media at a training center in Hinton. We are expecting another update about the fire from Parks Canada. A little while ago, I chatted with James Eastham, who is here. He said it is being written as we speak. So we should be getting more information from Parks Canada shortly. In terms of the weather conditions today, looking around Hinton, I'm seeing patches of blue sky, lots of clouds. It's cooler, it's a bit windy. Crews are taking advantage of these conditions to contain the fire, to keep it from spreading. We know that the 2 wildfires, the larger one south and the smaller north one, have merged, and they've burned an estimated 36,000 hectares. But mapping has been hard for many reasons, including the clouds that were obscuring the satellite imaging yesterday. There have been challenges in aircraft not being able to fly over. So we are expecting those maps to change. But just to describe it for you, the fire encompasses quite a large area, including south of town, running like right through that highway corridor, 93A, and the perimeter cuts through the southwest of town as well.
So is the fire still being described as out of control?
The fire is definitely still out of control, and Parks Canada said they don't expect it to be within control soon. It could take weeks to get it under control.
And do we know anything more about damage, particularly in the Jasper town?
Yes, so we know that there have been buildings and homes lost, with the damage being the worst on the west side of town, the southwest of Miette Avenue. We have seen videos showing rows of homes reduced to their foundations. We've seen pictures of some damaged buildings. We know, though, that all critical infrastructure in Jasper, this is important, including the hospital, emergency services building, several schools, the activity center, and the wastewater treatment plant, all of those buildings were protected. We know that Jasper Anglican Church, a historic Gothic heritage building, also known as St. Mary and St. George Parish, that burned down. We saw a photo of that yesterday that was posted by Woodlands County, one of the communities that has come to help fight the fire in Jasper. We also know the fire damaged a number of bridges around the town, including the Moberly Bridge and the Old Fort Point Bridge. In terms of the very well-known Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge, that's a landmark in the area. The hotel posted last night on social media saying that most of its structures, including the main lodge, are intact. And thanks to firefighters' work, much of the infrastructure on the east side of town was spared. So some good news about what has been saved so far in Jasper. And just minutes ago, Jasper Legion has posted a photo taken by a Jasper Fire Department member showing that the Legion is still standing as well.
It is nice to see some good news coming out of this. I know that there are some evacuees in the Hinton area. How have they been doing? I mean, there must be some frustration involved with the information just sort of dribbling out.
Yeah, my colleague spoke to a couple of evacuees yesterday. There are some here, but we know that evacuees have really dispersed to communities all over Alberta and BC. They had long journeys to get to these places. Really, they're just coming to terms with what is happening. We're hearing that evacuees are taking it moment to moment. They are explaining what's going on to their children, trying to pass the time, maybe entertaining them. Some people are visiting family, camping, or staying in RVs here. Some are taking their pets to be cared for somewhere else as they sort of wait to find out what to do next. Some evacuees are using social media to request certain supplies that they need or emotional support. I noticed Jasper Employment and Education Center, that's set up an office in Edmonton to help people with applying for EI if they need to, or if they have immigration questions. And you know, for people who have found out that their homes or their businesses are gone, they have a lot of questions about what's next. And what we're hearing is that people right now, they need time to come to terms with what's happened. They need time to grieve and to decompress, and like you mentioned, wait for that more of that information about the damage in town to be communicated.
Mm-hmm. Madeline, really appreciate your coverage all week on this. It's been excellent, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome. Take care.
You too. It's Madeline Cummings in Hinton. Now, she mentioned that Premier Danielle Smith is at the crisis center in Hinton, touring the facilities. She is going to be joined on that tour with the federal emergency preparedness minister, Harjit Sajjan, and they will be having a scrum. They'll be taking questions from media. We understand that's going to happen around 1 o'clock this afternoon, so it will be after we've signed off, we believe. If it does start any earlier than that, we will bring you that scrum as part of our programming today. You are listening to special CBC radio programming on the situation in Jasper. I'm Jim Brown. It's 12 minutes past 11 o'clock. And for a look now at the behavior of a fire like this, we've reached Mike Flanagan. He teaches about wildland fire at Thompson Rivers University in Kamloops. Hello, Mike.
Good to be with you, Jim.
We really appreciate you joining us. Yes. Now, as you've been watching all of this, how have you been reacting to what's been going on in Jasper?
Well, Jasper is a special place. It's one of my favorite places on this earth. And it was devastating, gut-wrenching to see this high-intensity fire roar up the valley. And, you know, Jasper is at the confluence of three valleys, and fire loves to run up and down valleys. It's a pathway for it. And so this was a high-intensity fire. And on Wednesday, it developed into something we called a pyrocumulonimbus, PyroCB for short. What it is a fire-generated thunderstorm. Mm-hmm. These are very intense and hard to predict, and it spread very rapidly. And these types of systems, which are column-based, spread lots of burning embers. And sometimes these burning embers, they're carried by the wind, and it was windy, can be carried kilometers. And so you think of the town of Jasper, as you know, everyone knows it was hot and dry in July, so all the grass would be dead, and you've got millions and billions of little burning bits of bark or twig falling, and that starts spot fires in town. Now, the idea is put sprinklers up, and if there was more time, I think there would have been more sprinklers running for a longer period of time. You know, perhaps more of the town could have been saved.
But you hit the two main points there, power and speed, and this fire had both.
It certainly did. And, you've heard, talk of, 100-meter flames. I believe those reports, and that's what you're facing. It's like a freight train coming at you.
Yeah.
And all you can do is get out of the way.
Yeah, a couple of the firefighters said it felt like they were in a war. So we have had some rain. It was raining yesterday. There was some rain overnight. Now, we just heard from Madeline Cummings. Apparently that rain has stopped now. But what kind of a difference does that make in getting something like this under control?
So hot, dry, windy conditions help the fire spread. The cooler weather, the wetter weather, I've heard about 15 millimeters have fallen. So it doesn't put the fire out, but the fire is quiet. And, you asked Madeline about, when will this be under control? Yeah, probably take weeks. And you say, well, why does it take so long? Yes, there's crews working on it as we speak, but, 36,000 hectares, that's close to half the size of Calgary. It's huge.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to go around the perimeter to make sure all the hot spots are out. And that's what you have to do before they say it's under control. So they have, probably a 3 or 4 day window where, the fire is going to be quiet. It's not going to be a problem and they can work on it. But if the hot, dry, windy weather returns, it could flare up again. So, they've got to work those areas where they still want to protect values on the landscape that haven't already been impacted. It's challenging. My hat goes off to the first responders, the firefighters, the wildland firefighters, structural firefighters. It's a hot job. It's a smoky job. And, my hat's off to them.
So obviously there are unknowns when it comes to trying to predict how a fire like this will behave. We don't know what the weather is going to be like exactly. We don't know how the winds are going to behave exactly. But generally, a fire of this magnitude, the two, the north and the south fire have come together, as you say, 36,000 hectares in size. How does it behave when it's reached this magnitude?
So, in fire management, the philosophy, if it's an unwanted fire, and we can put that aside for a second, but if a fire is close to a community, that's an unwanted fire. The idea is to hit it hard, you hit it fast. We call it initial attack. If you get to the fire when it's small, even when conditions are extreme, even if it's hot, dry, windy, you can put it out. So that's why detection of fires is so important. So if you see a fire in Alberta, it's 310 fire, that's valuable information. And then getting the resources, the helicopters, the crews to that fire as soon as possible. Because during extreme conditions, that window can be like 20 or 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. So, that's when you put out this fire. I'm hearing it was started by lightning, and that makes sense. We've had lots of fires start by lightning in BC, in Alberta. There's been lightning storms. So, and this is the season for lightning-caused fires. Spring, human-caused fires dominate. Summer, lightning-caused fires. So, the strategy is to put out unwanted fires as soon as possible.
So a fire like this, does it change its behavior when it moves from a wild environment into a more built urban environment like the town of Jasper?
Absolutely. It becomes what we call an interface fire. And so, our models work really well most of the time, with the exception of pyro CBs, okay, those fire-generated thunderstorms, because we know the vegetation, the fuel, we call it. But once it gets into a community, there's propane tanks, there's building materials, cars, rubber, plastics. There's all sorts of stuff that, we don't model that, how it's going to spread. And once it's in town, it spreads structure to structure, as opposed to tree. And, that's a different ballgame altogether. And so structural firefighters are trained to fight structural fires, wildland firefighters are trained to fight wildfires. However, since things like Slave Lake in 2011, there has been what we call cross-training, where structural firefighters get wildland firefighting, and vice versa, so that when these fires spread into, the wildland urban interface or into communities, we have some training on both sides.
Yeah, we heard, I think it was on the National last night, from one of the water haulers who was trapped in town when the fire came in. He was holed up in a cinder block building, and he said all he could hear was the explosion of propane tank after propane tank as the fire moved along.
Scary.
Yeah. Now, we've got more hot weather coming. Are we going to see more of these?
So we are going to see more fire. And, it's hard to say what the rest of the season is going to be like because it depends on the day-to-day weather. And, our forecast for day-to-day weather, pretty decent for about a week. Yeah, I know people may argue about that, but, beyond the week, it gets really challenging. The summer forecast and temperatures usually are better to forecast than precipitation. It's much more challenging because of thunderstorms and things like that. It's supposed to be a hot summer. And the hotter it is, the more fires we expect. And people say, well, why is temperature so important? Longer fire seasons. Our fire seasons start in February in BC and Alberta. More lightning. And lightning is a real problem because it's responsible for most of the burned area in Canada. And, this is lightning season, and we're seeing more lightning with a warmer world. And third is as temperatures increase, and we've had a really long spell of hot weather, maybe not as bad as the 2021 heat dome, but much longer. The atmosphere gets very efficient at sucking the moisture out of that fuel, that dead vegetation on the forest floor. So it means the fuels are dry. You walk through the forest, crunch, crunch, crunch. So it's easy for a fire to start, easy for a fire to spread, and it means more of that vegetation on the forest floor is available to burn, which leads to these higher intensity fires that are difficult to impossible to extinguish.
Mike, once again, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
My pleasure.
It's Mike Flanagan. He's a professor of wildland fire at Thompson Rivers University in Kamloops. You are listening to special programming dedicated to the fire situation in Jasper. I'm Jim Brown in Calgary, and if you'd like to join us, you can call in if you have any thoughts about what happened. We'd like to know how you're feeling about the situation, any memories you have or stories of Jasper. The number is 1-866-468-4422. You can also send us an email. The address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. Brooke Arith is a Jasper resident and evacuee, and Brooke joins me now. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, thanks for joining us. Can you tell us, first of all, how you're doing?
I mean, it's just absolutely devastating to kind of leave everything you've ever loved behind.
Yeah, no, I can only imagine. Where are you now?
We are very fortunate. We're one of few, I think, Jasperites that have family in the province, and we're down in Sylvan Lake, Alberta right now.
And do you have any information this morning about the status of your home?
We have received no official reports from anyone about our home, but it's not looking good for us.
So are you in one of those areas that we've seen
Absolutely.
We've seen videos of? Yeah. And I guess officials haven't been contacting you with any specific information about what's going on with the home yet.
I mean, they're actively fighting a fire, doing the best they can. So I don't think, unfortunately, that's the priority, and I'm happy that they are not making that the priority at this time.
So can you walk us through what happened earlier this week, from the time you got the call till the time you showed up at the family door in Sylvan Lake?
I mean, I think that like many Jasperites, we knew that the situation was not looking great in Jasper. On Friday, we had a couple spot fires pop up on the map. My husband and I prepped our vehicle at that time with our emergency evacuation kit with 72 hours worth of equipment. So we were ready to go. Monday, definitely things progressed, but the fire was so far from town that we really didn't think that this would be the situation we'd be in now. So we evacuated immediately on Monday evening. We were fortunate that when the order came in, we were in the car and going within minutes. So we didn't get gridlocked, and we slowly made our way to Valemount and drove 19 hours straight through to Sylvan Lake.
Because you couldn't do the straight trip from Jasper to Sylvan Lake. You were directed in the opposite direction, right?
At that time, the west road from Jasper was the only road that was open.
Yeah. So you're there, you don't really know what's going on. Are there questions that I could ask on your behalf? I'm going to be speaking to Red Cross a little later and some people who might have some ideas about how to go about getting help and maybe even getting some assistance as you are being an evacuee.
I think that we're pretty set up here. Like I said, we're fortunate. We have family that we've kind of fallen safely into their home. And I've been very impressed and very happy with internal communications between Parks Canada and the municipality, given the situation they're dealing with. I think they've done an excellent job kind of trying to stay up to date and inform residents of what's happening.
So what is your expectation of what the next weeks and perhaps months are going to look like?
I don't think I can answer that. I don't have the expertise to give a good answer. I mean, I don't anticipate being back in Jasper probably for months to years.
I mean, there's saying that, and then there's sort of coming to terms with that. How do you feel? I mean, as you're waiting to nod off at night and you're going through what's been going on and what's to come, how are you feeling?
Well, lots of sleepless nights lately. We've definitely, we have a plan in place where we're going to be moving to a neighboring community. We're going to try to set down some roots and just kind of stand by and wait to see if we have jobs, if we have, places to work, if kind of what that looks like. We're just waiting and see. We can't plan for the unknown until we know, kind of thing.
Well, Brooke, all the best. Very, very best over the next little while. I hope that, I hope that you get good news at some point in time. Perhaps it's not as bleak as it looks right now. But thank you so much for joining us. And yes, all the best.
Thank you.
That is Brooke Areth. She is a Jasper resident who is an evacuee right now, and she is fortunate enough to have family in Sylvan Lake. That's where she joined us from. This is special programming all about the wildfires and their aftermath in the town of Jasper. I'm Jim Brown. We are going to be talking to a lot of evacuees over the next hour and a half or so. Right now, joining me is Natalie Gannon. She grew up in Jasper. She's currently based in Kelowna. Her family owns the Alpine Village Cabin Resort in Jasper. Hello, Natalie.
Hi, how are you?
I am fine. How are you? How are you feeling today?
Really emotional. It's been just a nightmare the last 2 days. It's been really, really tough.
Do you know what has happened to your resort?
The status is still unknown at this time. We've had, some good news in the sense that we've tried calling our home, which is on the Alpine Village property, which is a landline phone, and the phone is ringing. So that is giving us hope that maybe our home is still there and our property is still there, but the status at this time is unknown. Our property is located 2 kilometers south of town, so we're hoping for the best, but planning for the worst. We just don't know.
Yeah, explain that to us. I just talked to Brooke, who said that based on some of the video that she's seen, she's pretty sure that her home didn't survive. If your property is south of town, that seems to me that would have been right in the path of that southern fire.
Yeah, that's what we're thinking. We really don't know at this point. We're just trying to hold on to a bit of hope, and that maybe there's some of our home is still there and some of our property is still there, but we're just wishful thinking at this point.
So none of the videos that you've seen have given you any indication about what could possibly have been going on at your property?
No, because our property is 2 kilometers south of town. I believe most of the footage we've seen is all from inside of the town of Jasper, and we're 2 kilometers south. So we really don't know at this point.
So how would you describe the level of frustration not to have this information, to be so far away and just so cut off from knowing what's going on?
Yeah, it's definitely frustrating. And at the same time, the devastation and the shock reality of this is sometimes it's just like, do I even want to know? Do I even want to see, what's happened to our property? Because through all of this, one of the first photos that surfaced online was a picture of Cabin Creek, and the home that was on fire was my best friend's home growing up. And it was just engulfed in flames. That was the first photo we've seen. So Jasper is such a small town. You know everyone. You've been to almost everyone's home. You know almost every person's who lives in each home. So
Yeah.
seeing every photo, almost every photo is hitting you. It's so hard because there's my best friend, there's, my coworker, there's my best friend's parents at home. It's just, it's devastating.
Tell us about Alpine Village Cabin Resort.
Alpine Village Cabin Resort is one of the most beautiful cabin resorts. It's all real log cabins. My parents have owned and operated it for almost 40 years. So my sister, my brother, and I all grew up on the property. My sister and brother still live in Jasper. I've moved on to Kelowna, where I live with my husband and 2 children, but I still visit Jasper, and it's the most beautiful place, Alpine Village. Our family has really created such a home, and we invite guests from all over the world year after year. So it's truly such a special place.
Sounds great. Natalie, good luck with this. I hope everything turns out as well as you're hoping it will. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's Natalie Gannon. She grew up in Jasper, and she's currently based in Kelowna. It's 11:30 now. We're going to take a quick break for some local news and weather. Tanara McLean joins me now with that. Hello, Tanara.
Good afternoon. Well, Premier Danielle Smith and Harjit Sajjan, Federal Minister of Emergency Preparedness, are on the ground right now in Hinton. They arrived not too long ago, and they're expected to hold a media availability around 1 o'clock Mountain Time this afternoon. Hinton is just outside of the Jasper National Park area. Now, the Jasper wildfire is still considered out of control, and that is as more crews arrive from around the world to help fight this fire. Late yesterday, we were told about 100 firefighters from Mexico landed at the Edmonton International Airport. Now, in addition to that help from Mexico, the province says 300 international firefighters will arrive in the coming days from South Africa and Australia. We are also expecting an update from Parks Canada very soon here. And in their update last night, Parks Canada said rain and cooler temperatures have definitely helped subdue the spread of this massive wildfire that consumed homes in the heart of the Jasper National Park. The agency is leading the fight on this fire. Now, in their latest update last night, they said between 10 and 15 millimeters of rain fell in the park Wednesday, leading to minimal spread throughout the day, and a further 10 to 15 millimeters was expected yesterday. Now, parks officials say the precipitation will likely keep the fire behavior low for at least the next 72 hours, but those strong winds gusting up to 60 kilometers an hour have definitely contributed to the spread at which this fire spread. Overnight, winds in the park There is some good news, rather. Overnight winds in the park were relatively calm. And the fire has been described as a monster because of just how big it is and the intensity. A new map released by Parks Canada shows just how large the fire actually has become in the past few days. It's now encompassing a large area south of the Jasper town site, including that important Highway 93. Fire officials say this fire in particular is expected to burn for weeks and will not be under control for the next little while. So far, about 36,000 hectares have burned. Now, although Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said 30 to 50% of the town was damaged, we heard that yesterday, Parks Canada still has not confirmed the full extent of the damage we're seeing there. CBC, though, has confirmed that the southwest portion of the Jasper town site sustained significant damage. But there is also some good news here. Parks Canada says critical infrastructure in the town of Jasper has been saved, including the hospital, emergency services building, both elementary and senior high schools, the activity center, and the wastewater treatment plant. Jim?
Yes, absolutely. And we were talking to Madeline Cummings a little earlier. It doesn't appear that it's raining now. And if it's as windy as you say, then that bit of moisture that did fall could get blown away quite quickly, and those dry conditions could return. Tanara, thank you very much for this. That's Tanara McLean. She will be joining us with news updates throughout our program today. I'm Jim Brown in Calgary, and this is live special programming dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper. If you have been evacuated from the town, we will have information for you. We will get the latest from our reporters near the park. We'll hear from officials from all three levels of government. We are also taking your calls. We'll be on the air until 1, and if you'd like to join join us. If you have any thoughts about what happened in Jasper, we'd like to know how you're feeling about the situation. We'd like to hear your stories and memories about the time that you've spent in Jasper. And the number to call, if you'd like to join us, is 1-866-468-4422. You can also send us an email. The address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. And coming up shortly after the news at 12 noon, I'll be joined by a historian who has written extensively on the history of Jasper National Park. We're going to be talking about the significance of that special part of the province, and we will look forward to having you join us in that conversation as well. So thank you very much for all of your calls. We've got some emails too. Here's an email we just received from Ray. Ray says, I've been at this for a while, asphalt, shingles, and plastic siding. Until we change the building code to require non-combustible exteriors, we will have more of these. Thank you very much for that email, Ray. Now, as you just heard from Tanara, there was an update this morning from Parks Canada. They said that the two fires that we had been talking about yesterday, the North Fire and the South Fire, have now merged. And so the firefighters are now fighting one extremely large fire. 36,000 hectares of land has already been consumed by this fire. And that's resulted in a lot of other problems, including road issues. We just heard from Tanara that Highway 93 has been affected by this. And Dave Waddell joins me now in the studio with the latest on some news if you're planning to be doing any driving in the province over the next couple of days.
Jim, I just wanted to pop in because we were getting some calls in the control room from callers who were wondering about road closures in the mountain parks and throughout the province because of these wildfire issues. So I just wanted to share what the latest information is from 511 Alberta with the mountain parks and other spots in the province. So Highway 16 west of Hinton is closed. You will not be able to travel west on Highway 16 west of Hinton. So I had a caller in the control room who was wondering about travel from Edmonton to Vancouver. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to go through Jasper or Jasper National Park at this time. That's going to be closed and for the foreseeable future, I would imagine. Highway 93 north from the Jasper town site down to Saskatchewan River Crossing is also closed at this time, as you were mentioning, as crews deal with those fires in that area. A couple of other wildfire closures in the province due to other wildfires. Highway 58 at Range Road 112 near John Doerr Prairie is closed. Highway 734, the Forestry Trunk Road, west of Water Valley is closed due to a fire that they're dealing in that Cremona Water Valley area. And then west of Water Valley, Highway 579, the Herald Creek Road is also closed. If you're heading into BC from Calgary, there are closures around Golden as well. So check the BC highway maps as well, because that will affect your travel if you're trying to go west from Alberta into BC through that Golden area. It's an evolving situation, obviously, but a lot of these fires, as we've heard throughout the hour, remain out of control. So it's going to be a problem for an extended period of time, and you will have to plan your routes very carefully to allow the wildfire crews to do their work. Yeah, I looked before I came into the studio at the situation around Golden, and there is a fire situation. It looks fairly close. It's south of Golden, but again, as you say, these situations change so quickly. So thank you, Dave. Thank you. And we will keep you updated on road situations around the province as we get that information throughout our program today. It is now 22 minutes before 12 o'clock. Candace Broughton is a longtime Jasper resident and the owner of Jasper Motorcycle Tours. She is currently staying with her husband's family in Armstrong, British Columbia. Good morning, Candace.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a few days, I understand, since you left. How are you doing?
Oh, we're all just in complete shock. It's just really surreal,
Do you know today what's going on with your home and your business?
Well, I have video confirmation that my house is standing across the street. All the houses are leveled. I have a photo of the business downtown Patricia Street. There was a significant fire there. The building itself is standing, but the roof has caved in. So I believe that's going to be lost fully. Our motorcycles are kept in the basement of that building, so I don't know that they would let us even in to retrieve anything. So it's just so hard to say until everything can be assessed. So it's just hard not knowing, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. How long have you been operating this business in Jasper?
This is our 18th summer. Yeah, it's just been a long time. We fought and struggled to get back above ground after COVID. It's been 4 years and we just got back to just operating pretty much normally. We're one of the top 10% of things to do in the world on TripAdvisor. Like we got back there, right? And it was a lot of work. Now we're just, can we do this again? And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, what a double whammy after getting through the pandemic. And I can imagine how a business like yours would have really been hit hard by the pandemic.
Yeah, with no tourism is huge in Jasper. And, we're a tough little town. We're resilient. We'll work hard, but it's going to be really hard to come back after this one. Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about Jasper. What does Jasper mean to you?
Well, I've been there since what? I don't want to date myself, but 91, I think I moved there. Yeah, it's just 34 years. It's my home. I've been there longer than I've been alive. And the community, the reason people show up there and you don't leave, you stay and you have jobs and friends. These people, the whole town is our family. We're all pretty sad.
Yeah. Have you been in touch with other Jasperites since you were evacuated?
Oh, constantly. All the business owners, the tourism industry, there's been phone calls and tears. And it's pretty tough.
It's so tough. Even though your home has survived, it's not like you can take that and say, okay, we're good. There's so much else involved in a community than just a home.
Yeah, I just can't imagine going back and just moving into my house and going, oh, okay, well, I've got these random items and the people across the street have nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's going to be really hard. Yeah.
So there are still so many unknowns. I'd like to ask you about, what your hopes are for going back. But before I do, what do you think about the way that information has been coming out after this?
Well, I think we'd like more information. I think they're doing the best they can. I'm lucky enough to know a lot of people on the ground there, but they're not allowed to say too much either. But of course, photos are coming through a little bit at a time, so we can see some parts of the neighborhood. I've got some video and stuff. So we get what information we can, but there's people who have no information and they still want to know about their address and their home, and there's lots of the rumor mill goes around. So yeah. It would be nice if there was more information. But again, a lot of people don't know. Yeah. I think it's frustrating as to why this happened to begin with. I think the pine beetle situation was something significant and we all knew about it. And we all knew that if a fire started in Jasper, the pine beetle, it would be nasty. And we were all talking about what if we have to escape out one highway? And that's exactly what had to happen. It was pretty scary. 25,000 people going down the road. It was bumper to bumper and people going 2 kilometers an hour. And I in hindsight, I'm sure they were doing the best, but I wonder why those pine beetle trees weren't cut down and a bigger path around the town was cleared. But just maybe this could have been prevented. And I don't know why.
Yeah, I guess there's going to be a lot of questions that will need answering in the months ahead. Now, what are your hopes for the town now? You're going to go back eventually when all of this is over.
I'm going to go back.
What?
I also work at the hospital. I work at the hospital. My husband works for Parks, so we've got jobs. When we go back, we're going to have to go back and start with that, and we're just going to have to take it a day at a time. I think the work and the cleanup is going to be years, and I'm sure tourism won't be back in the near future. The rest of the year is pretty much a write-off for most local businesses. We work until about July, and maybe we get our bills caught up, and then August and September are our money to get through the winter. Yeah. And now we've lost that. Yeah. So we're kind of all I guess it's going to be hard to see how it's going to go. I can't just stand down for another year or two and have the government lend us money that we're going to have to pay back. I don't think people can do that again.
Yeah, no, exactly. Candace, all the best in the future. I hope that your business is okay, and I hope you're right about your home being okay, and good luck. And thank you so much for joining us and telling us your story today.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
You too. It's Candace Broughton. She is an evacuee and a longtime Jasper resident and the owner of Jasper Motorcycle Tours. Well, a lot of questions for a lot of Jasperites today, and there will be a lot more questions as they start to make their way back home, because there are still so many unknowns about both the extent of the damage and what will be available to help. Parks Canada says many buildings in the town were lost. Now, the Insurance Bureau of Canada has been busy taking calls from affected residents. Aaron Sutherland is the Vice President of the Insurance Bureau of Canada, and he joins me now. Hello, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. What is IBC doing to try to get the message out to residents who may have lost homes or businesses?
Yeah, images like what we're seeing today and recent days coming out of Jasper are just devastating. There's just the human toll, as we're hearing, is enormous. And so, as insurers, one thing we want people to know is all standard home insurance policies cover you for wildfire. So we are here to help. We're going to be here to help put these pieces back together and help people begin to recover in the days, weeks, and months ahead. So if you've been impacted by these fires or by any fires, because we have several going right now in this province, we would really encourage folks, contact your insurance company, find out what kind of supports you have, whether you've seen direct damage to your property or not. Typically, you will have coverage for things like evacuation and the addition of hotel, food, lodging costs associated with that.
So that's a really important point you make, because this is not like a flood situation where there are different kinds of coverage packages covering different kinds of floods, either over land or sewer backup. With wildfire, you are covered.
Yeah, absolutely. From an insurance perspective, wildfire is included in all standard home insurance policies. And so there shouldn't be too much ambiguity about whether you have coverage or not. If you've got insurance, you should have it. And again, you've got support. You've likely got support whether your home has been directly damaged or not. If you've been forced out of your home due to an evacuation order and you don't know if your home's been damaged or even if it hasn't, and you're incurring costs associated with hotels, with food, if you were forced out quickly and you weren't able to take any clothes with you, insurance can help, provide additional supports there. And so it really is important for folks to reach out to their insurance company, have that conversation, and get those supports as quickly as possible. They can get, electronic fund transfers going quite quickly to make sure you have the financial resources you need in your time of need. And I would really say, look, this is what insurance is here for. Alberta's insurers, they're here to help. They want to help. We want to help be part of this recovery and help people get back on their feet as quickly as possible. And when they're forced outside their homes, we want to make sure we're doing all that we can to help them in that situation as well.
So if a resident of Jasper is not sure whether their home has been damaged, that's not something to wait for before you contact your insurance agent. You should be in touch with your insurer right away, because whether your home's been affected or not, you are still able to collect some things if you've been evacuated.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't wait to find out if you've had damage, if you've been forced out, if you live in Jasper and you're now in Edmonton, Calgary, Grand Prairie, what have you. Give your insurer a call. You're probably facing additional costs for hotels, things like this. We are here to help. If you don't know who your insurance company is, I'd encourage you to call us here at IBC. We're the Insurance Bureau of Canada. We're not here to sell anything. We're a trade association of the industry, and we are here to help connect people with their insurers. We're here to help answer questions people may have. They don't want to talk to their insurance company, but they want to talk about what home insurance typically provides. We can assist with that as well. We've got folks standing by. We can be reached toll free at 1-844-2-ASK-IBC. Times like this, they're gut wrenching. They're devastating for those impacted. There's a huge human toll. There's going to be a big financial cost for these events. But if, Alberta's insurers can help alleviate some of the anxiety and some of the challenges people are seeing, we want to do so. And again, we're here to help. And so I'd encourage everyone to give their insurance company a call to make sure they get the support that they're entitled to.
So that was 1-844, the number 2, and then ask IBC?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So walk us through the process here briefly. If someone has to file a claim for fire damage, what's involved?
So, Alberta's insurers, we've got representatives standing by, getting ready to go into this community when it's appropriate to do so. I mean, we have to recognize we're still very much in an active wildfire event. We still have first responders actively fighting these fires, and so we're still a little ways away from beginning that recovery process in earnest. But what we're going to see is when it's safe and appropriate to go back into this community, we're hopefully going to be able to have insurers doing that hand in hand with those impacted to make sure that we can begin reconstruction and recovery efforts as quickly as possible. It's going to be nuanced. Given the magnitude of devastation that we're seeing, this is going to be a challenging process. We're going to have to coordinate with Parks Canada, provincial government, with the municipality as well. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be all encompassing. It's going to be everything from, rebuilding the homes of those who have unfortunately lost everything. But even those homes that are still standing and have been spared by the fire directly probably no longer have power, are going to have some damage, things like fridges and freezers and the contents in those expiring and needing to have those removed. But that's another thing that insurance is there to support with and make sure that it's done in a responsible manner, and that we're taking these, outside the park into where they can be disposed of effectively. Insurance provides support for all of those things, and so it's going to be a very nuanced process. But it's something Alberta's insurers, we have a lot of experience with, and we're well prepared for. And the unfortunate reality is we're getting more and more experience with these types of events as we see them occurring more and more often.
Yes.
We always go back to Fort McMurray, but we also have the flood events, hail events in Calgary from just a few years ago. Mm-hmm. Slave Lake was within the past decade as well, and that's just within Alberta. The unfortunate reality is we're seeing more extreme weather events happening more often and impacting more and more Albertans and more Canadians. And it's having a human and financial toll, and it's unfortunately giving us a lot of experience in terms of how we can put these places back and get people back on their feet as quickly as effectively as possible.
So we've got the immediate help for people with costs associated with being evacuated. That can get triggered quite quickly. The more long-term help, the rebuilding, when should residents expect to be able to start seeing new homes being constructed?
We're still very much in the middle of an active wildfire event, so it's really difficult to say, what the timelines are going to be, and just recognizing that, Jasper is in the middle of a national park. That's going to add another level of complexity, and so as insurers, we are looking to coordinate as effectively as we can with the municipality, with the provincial government, but also candidly with Parks Canada and the federal government to make sure that we're able to get into this community and begin to try to put these pieces back together as quickly as we can. But, given the size and scope of devastation that we've seen, it's likely going to take some time. We still need to get this fire out. Once it is and we can start to get into this community, that's where we can begin the process of debris removal. That'll likely be the first thing folks see, is where, insurers and our contractors can get on site to start pulling some of the debris out of here. We're already hearing folks like Team Rubicon, which is an incredible organization that goes through and does sifting through debris to help find folks' valuables and artifacts and things of that nature. Those guys are getting prepared to get in there, because as much as we want to begin to rebuild and recover, we also want to make sure that what's left we're considerate of, and finding those pieces of memorabilia that may have survived this fire that people are going to want to hold on to. Insurance can help rebuild your home, and it's going to help rebuild people's homes in this community. But a lot of those memories can't be put back together. So if first and foremost, we're going to want to sift through and find some of those pieces, and then begin the reconstruction efforts in it.
And I'm going to be, in just a minute or two, talking to a representative of the Canadian Red Cross who's going to have some information about how people can help if they'd like to pitch in. But just one last question before I let you go, Aaron. You talked about all of the major events that we've been experiencing in this province lately, the fires, the hail, the flooding. In light of that, when you do start rebuilding these homes, Are the insurance companies going to start mandating any type of extra features, anything to protect future homes from the kind of fire damage we're seeing? Different roofs, different landscaping. Will the rules start to change?
I think that's a really important point to bring forward. We have to learn from the events that we're seeing, and we have to build back better. As insurers, we're going to build back to the building codes that are in place. But it's paramount that we make sure that we're doing all that we can to build back the right way. Jasper was already a fire smart community. I think that's likely helped. But when you've got flames 300-400 feet high, there's only so much that fire smarting can do. But we've got to make sure that as we put back together this community or any community here in Alberta or across the country, we're doing it in the right way, and we're thinking about the risk we face moving forward in communities like this, and using best practices to make sure that we're doing all that we can to build that resilience to hopefully mitigate the frequency of this type of event moving forward.
Aaron, we appreciate you joining us. Thanks once again.
Thank you for having me.
It's Aaron Sutherland, Vice President of the Insurance Bureau of Canada. You're listening to special programming dedicated to the fires in Jasper. I'm Jim Brown in Calgary, and we will be with you until 1 o'clock. We'll have a quick break for news in about 5 minutes. But before we break, if you'd like to help out in any way, help out the people of Jasper, Melissa Fougier with the Canadian Red Cross in Alberta may have some ideas for you, and she joins me on the line now. Hello, Melissa.
Hi, how are you this afternoon?
I am doing just fine. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure people have been reaching out to you already, yes?
Yes, we've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different people over the last few days. It's been a pretty busy time.
So if listeners want to know what they can do to help, what's the answer?
So right now we have currently launched a Alberta Wildfire 2024 appeal. And so the best way you can help currently, while we really see the unfolding events over the next couple of days, is really make a donation to that fund. And so that will help not only Jasper residents, but all people that have been impacted by fires across Alberta in 2024. So they can do that right away. We launched that yesterday, and so we would be happy to take that support. And the second way that they could support, if they want to volunteer, they can visit our website at redcross.ca/volunteer and fill out that application form, and we will process them as soon as possible.
What kind of volunteering work is available?
So currently, upon request of the City of Edmonton, the Canadian Red Cross is helping at the reception center here in Edmonton, providing accommodations and food support for evacuees that have been displaced from Jasper. And we will continue to support them in that capacity while we really see what's happening. We can help them with basic needs. We can help look at different ways in recovery, because this is just beginning. So there are going to be multiple ways. We also have disaster risk reduction programs. So if people don't want to get involved in the response side of it, they can get involved in helping with our preparedness and our mitigation programming.
So if you have a spare bed, you can suggest that a refugee can spend a few nights with you?
Well, we wouldn't actually be able to do that ourselves, but there are different sites set up where if people do have accommodations that they would like to share, currently with the City of Edmonton, we're providing hotel accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
But if people do want to open their home, there are different ways to access, and it's really probably best to check the municipality of Jasper's website to see if they're starting to take an inventory of that, or if there's a certain place they're directing that type of opening.
And what about once the town site is reopened? Are there opportunities to go and help clean up?
At this time, we haven't had any of those conversations. And so I think it's really early yet. We've started to see some of the visuals, but we don't actually know the extent of the recovery at this particular time. So I wouldn't know at this moment what exactly the opportunities might be, but I'm sure there will be many different opportunities to support along the way. It will be a large recovery operation.
Okay, so anyone who's interested in contributing to this fund, can you give our listeners a sense of where they should go?
Absolutely. So they could go online at redcross.ca, and they will see the Alberta Wildfires 2024 fund will come up as soon as they log in. They can do a donation by phone at 1-800 418-1111. Or if you'd prefer to do it by text, you can text AB Fires at 45678, and that's a $10 donation.
All right. Melissa, thanks once again for joining us.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Yes, you as well. That's Melissa Fougere. She is the Director of Emergency Management for Alberta for the Canadian Red Cross. You are listening to a special broadcast dedicated to the fire situation in Jasper. I'm Jim Brown, and I have just found out that our broadcast will probably be extending a little beyond 1 o'clock because we have decided that we will bring you the Premier's scrum from Hinton. Premier Danielle Smith, along with the Federal Emergency Preparedness Minister Harjit Sajjan, is going to be scrummed by reporters after touring the Emergency Management Center there at around 1. So we will be sticking around to bring you that as well. So we've got another hour of taking your calls. Then we'll hear from the Premier and the Federal Minister. But right now, it is 12 o'clock. Time for the news with Kenny Mason.
This is CBC News Alberta. It is mostly cloudy and 20 degrees in Calgary and 10 degrees in Jasper at 12 o'clock. Good afternoon from Calgary. I'm Kenny Mason. Fire crews in Jasper are hoping to take advantage of earlier rain and cooler temperatures today, while government officials tour the command center in Hinton. CBC's Emily Williams has the details.
The fire which ripped through Jasper on Wednesday night has merged with another fire burning to the north of town. The single blaze continues to burn out of control and is estimated to have burned 36,000 hectares so far. Wet weather since Wednesday night led to minimal spread, and that rain is expected to continue into the weekend. Parks officials say crews will take advantage of this to suppress the fire as much as possible, but that it will take weeks to get under control. Due to thick smoke cover, mapping the exact fire perimeter remains a challenge. Premier Danielle Smith and Federal Minister Harjit Sajjan toured the Hinton Command Center at 11 a.m. this morning. They will take questions from reporters, and provincial ministers will give an update later in the afternoon. Emily Williams, CBC News, Edmonton.
Canadian National Railway says it has restarted rail shipments through Jasper National Park. Canada's largest railroad operator suspended operations in the Jasper area Wednesday afternoon as those wildfires raged through the area. The halt had Canadian ports prepared for a slowdown in the movement of goods as Jasper is located along one of the country's key supply chain corridors. Tourism operators are in limbo as a result of that wildfire. The operators of the Rocky Mountaineer passenger train have posted a social media statement saying they're unable to continue their rail journeys to or from Jasper for the foreseeable future. Jasper Park Lodge has confirmed the main lodge has been spared, but they are still assessing the damage to the rest of the resort property. Jasper Raft Tours says everything on its compound has burned. Last year, an estimated 2.5 million people visited Jasper National Park. And northwest of Calgary, the municipal district of Bighorn is under a local state of emergency as a wildfire burns in the Water Valley area. That wildfire continues to burn out of control. A handful of homes were evacuated in the rural area, and some random campers were told to leave yesterday. Others are being told to prepare to leave if needed. A reception center has been set up at the Water Valley Community Hall. And Scotiabank customers who expected to be paid today haven't been, but it's not their employer's fault. As CBC's Paula Duhatchik reports, Scotiabank says it has resolved the technical issue, but we'll have to wait and see what lingering effects there are.
Scotiabank customer Meg Watson was expecting to see her paycheck in her account this morning, but it wasn't there.
My first feeling is like, oh no. You know, you get that stomach falling out.
She's not the only one. Down Detector, an online outage tracker, shows that users started experiencing problems early Friday morning. By 9:51 Eastern Time, nearly 4,800 users had reported a problem. Scotiabank says it's dealing with a technical issue, and some inbound payments, like checks and direct deposits, aren't being applied to customer accounts.
It's frustrating for sure.
The bank says it's trying to resolve the problem as fast as possible, and that customers will be refunded for any fees they incur as a result of the outage. Paula Duhatchik, CBC News, Toronto.
The man who fatally stabbed a teenage girl at the Leduc High School has been found guilty of second-degree murder. Dylan Pountney was charged with first-degree murder after he killed 17-year-old Jennifer Winkler in March of 2021. He was 19 at the time. Court of King's Bench Justice Eric Macklin ruled this morning that Pountney intended to kill Winkler when he rushed into their social studies classroom, stabbing her 5 times. But Macklin says the Crown didn't prove it was planned and deliberate first-degree murder. Pountney was in a state of psychosis at the time, and the judge says that part of what raises reasonable doubt that he thought about the consequences of his actions. A second-degree murder conviction means a life sentence with no parole eligibility for 10 to 25 years. First-degree murder automatically sets that period at 25 years. And Canada Soccer says the drone spying incident at the Olympics may be part of a larger systemic ethical shortcomings at the organization, with new concerns the team may have spied on competitors at the recent Copa America tournament. CBC's Philip Lee Shannock has the details.
Kevin Blue, CEO of Canada Soccer, says allegations of drone use to spy on competitors have expanded beyond these Olympic Games.
Information from internal sources that gave me reason to think further about the potential that this type of behavior was, systemic.
Blue removed women's head coach Bev Priestman, but he wants an investigation into possible systemic ethical shortcomings on the men's side as well, as recently as during the Copa America tournament. John Herdman, head coach of Major League Soccer team Toronto FC, also led the Canadian men's national soccer team.
I'm highly confident that in my time as a head coach at an Olympic Games or World Cup, we've never been involved in any of those activities.
Herdman says he will participate in Canada Soccer's internal review. Philip Lee Shannock, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is your update from the CBC News Calgary newsroom. Jim.
Thank you very much, Kenny. That's Kenny Mason with the news. I'm Jim Brown, and you are listening to special live programming dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper. We have been asking for your thoughts, your comments about what happened this week with the fire. We'd like to know how you're feeling about the situation, your stories and memories of times that you've spent in Jasper. We welcome those as well. And if you'd like to join us for the next hour, the number to call is 1-866-468-4422. Our email address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. Very shortly, I'm going to be joined by a historian who's written extensively on the history of Jasper, and we will be talking quite a bit about that. But before I go there, I'd just like to read a couple of emails that we received over the last 10 or 15 minutes. First, here's one from Art. And Art writes, after the Fort McMurray fire, I wrongly assumed that we would cut fire check lines around all of our woodland cities. I think that Jasper especially has proved me wrong. Why do we not cut a 1 kilometer wide fire break around all our major centers in forests? Leaving the forests untouched around these areas in this day and age just sounds negligent to me. If we had If we had these wide cut lines complete with fire-resistant buildings, would we even be talking about Jasper today? So that's an email from Art. And now here's one more. This is from Ava. And Ava says, I immigrated to Canada in 1985. My first trip out of town was to Jasper to see the majestic Rocky Mountains. Since my son was born in 1993, we visited Jasper numerous times in every season. In summer, we hiked. In winter, we skied at Marmot Basin. We stayed in dozens of Jasper hotels and private accommodations. I can't imagine the plight of people who lost their homes, businesses, and livelihoods. We have a friend in Jasper we visited over the years, and I would like to find out if he survived. His name is Jasper Bear, a wooden monument. Does anybody know if he is still there? Thank you very much for that note, Ava. If you would like to join us between now and 1 o'clock, you can give us a call at 1-866-468-4422 or send an email with your thoughts to alberta@noon@cbc.ca. Ian McLaren is Professor Emeritus of History at the University of Alberta. He has written extensively on the history of Jasper National Park, and he joins me on the line now. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for joining us, Ian. Let me start by asking you how you're feeling about all of this.
I'm devastated. I'm devastated because I lost places that hold a lot of memories. I'm particularly devastated for friends and associates who live in Jasper and obviously don't know what they'll be going back to, whether their home will be standing or whether it'll be gone, and if it's standing, under what circumstances they'll be able to inhabit it in the future.
Can you tell us a bit about your original connection to Jasper? How did that become your area of interest?
I've worked for several decades on a painter named Paul Kane, because the continental fur trade route went through what's now Jasper Park. He was the first to make depictions of some of the mountains and some of the people whom he met in the 1840s when he passed through, both going west to the ocean and coming back to go home to Ontario. That was my start. Then I became involved in a project called Culture, Ecology, and Restoration that a colleague at the U of A named Eric Higgs was heading up. That started in the mid-1990s, and that studied landscape change over time.
Mm-hmm.
I was associated with that project as the historian for it and provided historical detail to it.
And maybe you can help us try to answer the question, what is it about Jasper? I mean, this is not just any town being devastated by wildfire. This is clearly something different. Why?
The mountains are iconographically symbolic for all of Canada. The mountains are known around the world for being Canada, almost a synecdoche of the entire country. In terms of nature, I think they've long been regarded as Canada's crown jewels. And Jasper is one of them, along with Banff and Yoho and Kootenay and Mount Revelstoke. And because people have revered mountains since the time of alpinism's inception in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s, they think of idyllic experiences when they think of mountains. Just consider, if you're an Albertan, what you expect when you drive east from Calgary or Edmonton as distinct from traveling west. And I think you have, in a nutshell, your own understanding of excitement that comes over you when you're entering the mountains.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do want to get into some of the history of the region. That's one of the main reasons why we asked you to join us today. But I'd also like to get at some of your own personal experiences in Jasper. When you reflect on the time that you've spent there, what are some of the images that come to mind?
The Palisades Center, which, as far as I can see from fire maps, is probably burned to the ground. It's downstream from the town center. And it's where the Culture, Ecology, and Restoration Project was headquartered for several summers in the 1990s. So I spent an awful lot of time there. I'm a worshiping Christian, so I know the Church of St. Mary and St. George and met some lifelong friends attending services there. I've done work in the Jasper Yellowhead Museum and Archives up on Bonhomme Street. I'm really hoping that it didn't burn because we'll lose an awful lot of history if it did.
I just want to stop you on that. The archives there. Do you know, based on what you've seen, whether it looks to be safe?
I've heard that the activity center was spared. It's across the street. If I'm correct in assuming it's the one with the swimming pool. So on the south side is the activity center, and on the north side is the museum and archive. So I'm not confident, but I'm hopeful that it was spared.
Because that obviously would be an enormous loss.
Yes, it would.
Have you been spending much time doing any research in Jasper lately? Are there some projects that you've been working on in the last little while that you can tell us about?
You know, I've just published a long book about the artist Paul Kane, and that collects a lot of local knowledge about Jasper Park and the town site. Kane actually depicted Le Rox Prairie, which is that flat that if you're coming from Edmonton, you drive along when you take the exit to go into town. And so there's great historical worth to his sketches. I also work closely with Mike Boissuita, who is a former owner of Pine Bungalows, who had me lecture annually at the bungalows for the tourists who were staying there. And I keep in close touch with a number of people in town, even though I'm not living near Jasper at the moment.
My guest for the remainder of our show today is Ian McLaren. He is Professor Emeritus of History at the University of Alberta, and he has written extensively on the history of Jasper and Jasper National Park. And we do welcome your thoughts, your memories of time you've spent in the area. Perhaps you're from there. Perhaps you've got some deeper connections to Jasper. Give us a call, please. The number is 1-866-468-4422, or email us. The address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. And we're going to go to a caller now. We have Sandra joining us. She is from Jasper, but I don't believe that's where she's joining us from now. Sandra, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Where are you joining us from?
I am sitting on a siding in Rocky Mountain House, working my way back to Hinton, where I relocated my horses to.
So you and your animals were evacuated earlier this week, is that correct?
Yes, I luckily had taken my horses out on Saturday, left them at a friend's place, and then I was evacuated west to Valemont during the big evacuation.
On I guess, Monday night into Tuesday morning.
Yeah, Monday, yeah.
Do you have any information, Sandra, on the situation with your home?
I believe from the photographs that I have seen that my home is still standing.
Okay, well, that's some good news.
Yeah, I really feel for the many people in Jasper who've lost their homes, and trying to reach out and offer what I can in terms of accommodation and help.
Now, can you tell us what you had to go through to relocate your horses? How many horses are we talking about?
Well, I only relocated two, my own horses, and but there are now about 80 horses were relocated. Most of that relocation was done by Gunnar Ireland, the brother of our mayor, and another group were relocated to the Hinton and Brule areas.
And what was that like? I don't know if you need to use the word only when you're talking about two horses. It seems like a big endeavor, even with just two horses.
Well, the difficult thing with horses and loading is they're very well aware of your level of stress and can respond accordingly. Some horses are just great. They go, okay, she's stressed out, let's get on. And others say, hey, she's stressed. I need to be stressed too. So it's.
And so which way did your horses go?
Well, they were not easy to load, and I wasn't loading them in a stress situation.
Right.
They were picking up on something.
They're picking it up. Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess it was just unusual behavior too, right?
Yeah.
So, have you reached out to insurers? Have you started to prepare for what comes next? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, the insurance company just called me, actually, before I called into the show. And they have apparently hired an army of people to help people get their claims started, and someone to connect with and ask questions. So I was impressed by that.
And any idea at this point when you think you may optimistically be able to get back in your home?
Absolutely none. I was listening to the show earlier, and the fire specialist saying that these fires are going to be burning for quite some time.
Yeah.
Speaking with someone who has also experienced fires in the north, and in that case, it was a couple of months before the people were able to get back in. So I have no idea. I know I need to go buy some new underwear and socks and clothes.
And you've got horses to feed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, good luck getting. Good
right
luck.
now, they're just on pasture.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck getting to Hinton, and I hope seeing you de-stresses your horses a little.
Yeah. Okay. A couple of other things that I think are really key. One of them, many people in Jasper are involved in the private home accommodation business, and trying to work with the accommodation, the big online platforms, has been very stressful.
I see. So trying to get accommodations through places like Airbnb, it hasn't been working for you. Yeah.
Trying to get the accommodations in Jasper canceled.
Oh, I see the bookings that have now had to be pulled down. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's very disappointing. So I'm hoping Airbnb will get the message.
All right. Well, Sandra, thank you so much for calling. All the best. Good luck going forward.
Okay. Thank you very much.
That is Sandra. My guest for the entire second hour today is Ian McLaren. He is a professor emeritus of history at the U of A, who's written extensively on the history of Jasper National Park. Ian, let me ask you, has Jasper ever seen anything like this before? Have fires ever gone into the community and done this kind of substantial damage?
No, not into the community. This is unprecedented, and the damage is unprecedented. There have been fires in Jasper as recently as September 2022, the Chettaman fire, which parks decided to let burn because it didn't impact the town site. Mm-hmm. And therefore, there's a lot to be learned every time a wildfire burns through. And that was a useful lesson. I think fire ecologists have been learning about mountain fires since the 1988 wildfire in Yellowstone Park, when fire ecology really took off for the first time, and understandings of the real damage that a heightened fuel density can create were being studied.
And in a national park, that's of particular importance because it is essentially acres and acres of heightened fuel density.
Yeah, that brings us to what the case was before it became a park, and it became a park in 1907. And the name in 1907 tells you everything. It was Jasper Forest Park.
Mm-hmm.
But during the fur trade in the 1820s and 30s, fur traders wrote of the upper Athabasca Valley. I'll read you one snippet from Ross Cox's book. He was there in June 1817, so 200 years ago. The genial influence of a June sun relieved the wintry perspective of snow-clad mountains, and as it rose above their lofty summits, imparted a golden tinge to the green savannas, the open woods, and the innumerable rivulets which contributed their waters to swell the Athabasca. I realize that's a bit romantic, but notice that the emphasis, savannas are grasses,
mm-hmm.
not trees, and they were predominating. And so meadows, not forests, on the valley floor. And so what we did when we started it as a forest park in 1907 was take fire out of the ecosystem. This was thought by conservationists at the time to be enlightened thinking. It was the headwaters of Alberta rivers that the creation of the parks in part was trying to guard, and because water was needed for the prairies, because they were going to be settled by farmers.
Mm-hmm.
That was the thinking. But we also expelled all indigenous people in order for wilderness to be wilderness. The definition invoked at all times was that it was uninhabited. A part of the attraction for tourists was that it was thought to be uninhabited.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with the expulsion, so out went seasonal burning.
Yeah.
the motto and the understanding of seasonal burning is if you burn early and you burn often, you'll never have a fuel density that burns too high, 300-foot flames, too deep and too hot to create, for example, the fire thunderstorm that occurred in Jasper this week. So
it's an interesting point. I mean, we think of these national parks as acting in some sense as a kind of preservation, but perhaps we're not preserving what should be preserved. Perhaps we're preserving some sort of artificial construct.
That's very well put. That's a good analysis. We didn't know we created a monster, and because for 111 decades and more we have been, certainly parks officials have known since 1988 that something needed doing, and they were. To their credit, they were undertaking prescribed burns and thinnings of forest. Their efforts got overtaken by the amount of dead wood that was created by the infestation of the pine beetle. And it would have been awfully radical and awfully quick for a big bureaucracy to say, you know, we're going about this the wrong way. So they took other measures, including making the town site fire smart. But you can't beat a hot summer with a strong wind blowing in the wrong direction. You can't beat nature.
No, that was unstoppable. My guest for the next half hour or so is Ian McLaren, Professor Emeritus of History at the U of A, who has written extensively on the history of Jasper National Park. This is special programming dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper. Now, ordinarily, you tune in to Alberta at noon on a Friday at this time, and you'd hear Kath Smythe on joining me talking about gardening and taking your questions. But yesterday, we had to give Kath a call and tell her we were not going to be doing our gardening show today. And Kath had some memories of Jasper to share with our producer when she picked up the phone. And so we asked her to come on anyway. We're not going to ask you any gardening questions, Kath, but if you have some stories about Jasper or thoughts to share, we'd really like to hear them.
Well, my stories go back way back when I was in school, and I made the comment that my work in Jasper paid for my schooling in that I was able to buy all my textbooks, and that was a big deal. But Jasper itself just entranced me, and I kept going back to visit it even after I wasn't there. I took a lot of visitors there because of it. And I worked at Takara Lodge. I haven't found anything, whether it's still there or not, but it was such a neat experience. I was a chambermaid, and it was really quite the thing. I also remember the Athabasca Hotel, and in the lobby, I was fascinated by the orange trees. So see, I did pay attention to the plants. And the owner, apparently, of the Athabasca back then he grew them from the orange seeds in the kitchen, and that's what was growing in the lobby. But also the town site itself was incredible. And Jasper the bear, I was so relieved to see him in photos.
So you have seen Jasper the bear, because earlier I had an email from Ava wondering if Jasper the bear had survived. So you.
Oh, I've seen him. I saw him on a picture somewhere. Somebody put it up on Facebook, and I was so glad to see him. I also have to say, one of my dear, dear friends from back in those days married a Jasperite. Is that how you say it? Oh, yes. And they got married in Jasper, and it was beautiful. And I've been in touch with them, and we've gone back and forth and talked about some of our early memories. And Lloyd, of course, he remembers that he grew up and was born in Jasper.
Mm-hmm.
So he has some really great stories, and it was very neat. And I was there when both their children were born in Jasper, and that's another part of it. And I'm glad to see that some parts of it have survived, but I'm devastated to see what's burned.
Now, you said that Jasper enchanted you right off the bat. What was it?
It was the incredible trees and the open spaces, and how interesting it was for being a town of very few. Well, I don't know what the population was on off-season, but even when it was full of people, it still had open fields and wild animals. Oh, my goodness. I met my first ever elk and was startled beyond words. I also one day was walking back from town into the lodge,
and met a bear. And when you're walking, that's rather an interesting experience. But myself and my friends had been told to just be still and or make lots of noise. So we made lots of noise because you should hear two young girls scream. Anyway, things like that. And the mountains just... Skiing at Marmot was an experience after that. It really was.
Kath, I'm really happy you took the time to talk to us today, and we will talk to you in your more normal role next week.
All right, then.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay,
Kath
bye-bye.
Smythe, she's with the Calgary Horticultural Society, and usually she's sitting in the studio answering gardening questions on Friday afternoon. You're listening to special programming dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper and Jasper National Park. We will have more for you in our next half hour, including more on the history of Jasper with Professor Ian McLaren. We will also be sticking around long enough to bring you a briefing that Premier Daniel Smith and the Federal Emergency Preparedness Minister Harjit Sajjan will be having with journalists in about a half an hour from now. The time, as always with these things, is fluid. But right now, it's 12:30, and Tanara McLean joins me with a news update. Tanara.
Good afternoon, Jim. So like you just said, we're waiting to hear what Premier Daniel Smith and Federal Emergency Preparedness Minister Harjit Sajjan have to say about the ongoing wildfire situation. We are expecting them to take questions from the media around 1 o'clock. Now, they both are on the ground touring the Incident Command Center in Hinton. For anyone who doesn't know, Hinton is just outside of the Jasper National Park area. We're also expecting an update from Parks Canada on the situation soon. They are the lead agency handling this fire because Jasper is a national park. So what many people want to know right now exactly is how much has been damaged. Well, yesterday we heard Premier Smith say about 30 to 50% of the town site sustained damage, but Parks Canada has not confirmed that or given a number. But they have said there is extensive damage to the town site. But the damage so far that we can confirm is mostly limited to the southwest portion. Several businesses and other infrastructure like bridges in the national park, though, have also been impacted. Yesterday, Parks Canada said Moberly Bridge and the Old Fort Point Bridge have been damaged. Bridges on the Iceville Parksway will need to be assessed, they said, for structural damage as well. So the parkway is also called Highway 93. It's a long stretch of road that connects Jasper down towards Lake Louise. Highway 93 is still closed between Jasper Town Site and the Saskatchewan River crossing right now. Highway 16 is also closed in the park for a long stretch of road between Hinton and all the way over into BC near the Mount Robson Park area, so that's a very long stretch of road. The closure of this highway in particular, Highway 16, will impact the movement of goods and people to and from BC because it is such a major highway and access point. Turning now to weather in Jasper. So we've heard Parks Canada officials say that the cooler temperatures have definitely helped. Up to 20 millimeters of rain have fallen in that area since Wednesday. Right now in Jasper, we're sitting at 13 degrees, which is much cooler than the average daytime temperature, which is around 22. The high today in Jasper is going up to 20 degrees. There is a chance of showers, but really it's been those high winds impacting this firefight. We heard earlier this week parks officials say that the winds were gusting up to 60 kilometers an hour, which forced the fire to move about 15 meters a minute. So those high winds are still expected in Jasper today. Tonight going down to 7 degrees with showers. Tomorrow 22 degrees and a chance of showers. And then Sunday 24 and sunshine. In Edmonton today, we're sitting at 16 degrees right now. 18 is the high, a chance of showers and possibly a thunderstorm and also some high winds. And in Calgary, it's shaping up to be a pretty nice afternoon, 21 degrees and a mix of sun and cloud. Today, the high is 23 degrees.
Tanara, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Tanara McLean in the newsroom. I'm Jim Brown, and you're listening to special programming. We're dedicating 2 hours today to the wildfire situation in Jasper. We talked about some breaking news over the hour between 11 and 12, and in this hour, the regular Alberta at noon slot, we've been asking you to give us a call with your thoughts and memories of Jasper. We've been getting calls and emails. Let me give out the number one more time. If you would like to join us, the number is 1-866-468-4422. And if you'd like to send a note to us, our email address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. Now, here's an email we received from Ian referring to two earlier emails that I read out. Ian writes, I heard the comment about the 1 kilometer fire break, and while this may be part of a solution, the larger issue is a buildup of fuels in our forests. The forests of much of the eastern slopes of our province are unnaturally old. Protected areas and caribou ranges exacerbate the situation. Until we collectively accept that disturbance is a natural phenomenon and decide to use active forest management to replace fire, these events will continue to occur. And then Ian adds a PS. He says, I saw a picture. Jasper the bear survived. So there you go. Two sources, Ava, both Ian and Cass Smythe, are saying that your concerns about Jasper the bear are not warranted. He has apparently made it through. I have been joined for this entire hour by historian Ian McLaren, Professor Emeritus of History at the University of Alberta. Professor McLaren has written extensively about Jasper National Park, and he joins me back on the show now. If you have any thoughts about Jasper memories, Jasper history, please give us a call. Ian, welcome back. Let me start this half hour off by asking you how Jasper came to be.
I spoke a little earlier about the establishment of Jasper Forest Park in 1907. This was about 20 years after the establishment of Banff Park. And the Federal Department of the Interior was looking to guard against the development, especially through resource exploitation of the height of land in Alberta, so as to guarantee a lengthy, enduring supply of water to farm what was to become and was already becoming farmland on the prairies. And subsequently, of course, 2 train lines were built into the park, believe it or not, at the same time, competing train lines, one Grand Trunk Pacific, the other Canadian Northern. One had its station at Jasper, the other at a place called Lucerne, farther up in the Miette Valley. And with the advent of trains in the valley came tourists. From the very start, parks were mandated only if they could pay for themselves. And early commissioners of parks understood that tourism was the way to pay for them, for the management of them and everything else. And so working in conjunction with the railways, they started bringing in tourists in considerable numbers. In fact, in terms of the town site, there were roads in Jasper and to Moline Lake and to the tea house at Edith Cavell before there was a road to Jasper. So there were roadsters in the town site, but trains brought people into town.
And apparently trains brought cars into town too.
They did. And Jasper Park Lodge had its own fleet, and from the start became the premier lodging in Jasper. It's no wonder that in 2005, when the province celebrated its centennial, they thought a good place to lodge the Queen and Prince Philip was the Outlook cabin at Jasper Park Lodge, which they thoroughly enjoyed staying at.
It's Ian McLaren, Professor Emeritus of History at the U of A. He'll be with us for the rest of the program to share some stories from Jasper's history. Earlier in the program, I spoke with Melissa Fougere from the Canadian Red Cross, and she mentioned that the Red Cross has set up a text line to help collect donations for people in Jasper. And a few folks have called in and asked for that number once again. So here it is. If you text AB Fires to 45678, then you will make a $10 donation to the relief fund. And you can also call, it's a toll-free number, 1-800-418-1111, or you can donate online at redcross.ca. We have made a call out in this call-in show. We have Kristen Heimbecker on the line. She lives in Edmonton. She's originally from Fort McMurray, and Jasper has always had a strong connection for her. Kristen, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you you talking to us today because it's an interesting combination that you bring to this conversation because you have the Fort Mac connection and the Jasper connection. Can you talk us through some of the things that you're thinking this week?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, being from northern Alberta, I wasn't able to, travel there much as a kid. I remember I have one photo with the Jasper bear, of course, from my childhood, but it wasn't something we were able to do a lot. Yeah, seeing the fires and just knowing, the people of Jasper are just amazing caretakers of the land, and the people that live and work there and have grown up there or have traveled there or working. And just having the perspective of, my family that has had to rebuild and friends, and knowing the impact and the longevity of the recovery process and rebuild is really weighing on me because it's kind of bringing all those emotions back from 2016, going through this with all of my, friends and family. And I just know the gravity of it, like a little bit deeper than, that it's not just, it's the news cycle and it's over. It's a long-standing issue and something that, traumatic that's happened to this community.
So obviously it's still very early. A lot of people don't even know if they're going to have to rebuild. They don't even know the situation or the condition of their homes. But what can you share based on your experience in Fort McMurray about what those who do have to rebuild are in store for?
Well, I mean, even those that don't have to rebuild, so for my parents their house wasn't touched and it was pretty far from the fire, but they had extensive damage of smoke and, all their, the power's out for days on end. So there's, appliances that need to be replaced. There's just a lot that goes to it. It's not, but those that need to rebuild it is a long process. I know I think people didn't even come back for, at least a month before everything was even just to go and see what had happened. So it's just a very long process. And it's trauma on top of more trauma of having to rebuild and deal with, everything that comes up. And even yearly as Christmas comes up, I know, everything with what's lost is really important to people. And, it seems like just, these material things, but they have deep meaning for a lot of people. And I know, there's no way everyone got out with everything that they would want to take with them, but I'm glad everyone got out safely. That's the main thing for sure at this point. Yeah,
we had an earlier caller on the show who talked about that feeling of being in their house, which wasn't damaged, and having all of your stuff, but knowing that the people across the street have no stuff.
Yeah. There's almost a guilt to it. And, just knowing that you have all these like ornaments from when you're, a child and things that have been passed down by generation. And they don't seem that important when you're putting them on the tree. But then when you can't put them on the tree, it's a whole nother level of sadness and grief for sure that this community is going to have to go through.
So, Kristen, what did Jasper mean to you? What made it so special?
I mean, especially in the last 5 years, I think being able to introduce my children to Jasper and seeing it through their eyes again is just like, you're experiencing it for the first time. And even during COVID, like we couldn't really afford to stay and it was, a complicated situation going on, but we would go and do day trips in which it's a 4-hour drive. And they were, excited to get up at 5 a.m. and go do a 5-kilometer hike and then drive home, not get home until it's dark. So that's some of the, memories that I've made. And I've experienced the Dark Sky Festival a few times in Jasper and, taken anniversary trips with my husband. And it's like somewhere where you can just really connect. And it feels like it's somewhere where you can connect with something that's bigger than yourself. So it just really holds a special place in my heart. And, it's nice to have somewhere like so beautiful and, it's a treasure really. So there's a lot of sadness and grief. I think that, all of the province and worldwide, I think are experiencing right now because it's a huge loss, even if it's only parts of it. It's all important in the wildlife there. And, it's a huge thing, huge loss for everybody.
Kristen, I'm really happy you could join us today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's Kristen Heimbecker. She's originally from Fort McMurray. She now lives in Edmonton, and Jasper has always been an important place for her and for her family. You're listening to a special edition of Alberta at Noon dedicated to the situation in Jasper. I'm Jim Brown, and we've still got about 15 minutes to take your calls if you have any thoughts to share. The number is 1-866-468-4422. Our email address is alberta@noon@cbc.ca. And our next caller is Phil, and he's joining us from Edmonton. Good afternoon, Phil.
Hi, how are you today?
I am doing just fine. I understand you have some pretty strong connections to Jasper.
Yeah, it's not a good day for me because my family has had a cabin in Jasper since 1945, and it's on Lake Edith, and we really don't know what, if anything, has happened to it. Hopefully nothing, but that's pie in the sky. It's been a grand place to spend all of my life in my summers. And I never went anywhere else. Never went anywhere else in the summertime until I was 19 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then kept going back. Well, we kept it, and it's still in the family, and we use it.
Yeah.
We use it as much as we can. We use it as much as we can. The lease allows us from the 1st of April till the end of October.
Mm-hmm. So when the tourists walk by and see those nice old cabins and wonder who owns those cabins? Well, you do. And you've had it since 1945. That's amazing. That's amazing. So
that's correct.
Based on what you've seen, Phil, what do you think has happened to your cabin?
Oh, God. I saw a picture yesterday, and I thought, it may have made it. They may have made it around the lake, but we're not sure.
Mm-hmm.
There's only 50 cabins. We're not sure. I can't speculate. We're all, I talked to all my neighbors and my friends that are, and we're all hoping the same thing. And, but they're probably gone.
Were there any prevention measures taken at the lake? Were any of the cabin owners thinking about, we've got a lot of forests around us. We've got a lot of pine beetle infestation around us. It's been quite dry in the summer. Maybe we should try to, do something to try to mitigate potential fire.
We've all done Fire Smart. We've done Fire Smart there before Fire Smart was. I think that's where it was invented. There was a warden from Jasper who started Fire Smart, and his name just misses me for a minute. But when I started raking the bush, and my father, who's obviously no longer around, my father would have just rolling in the grave, Phil, you're raking the bush. Well, that's what we raked. We raked the bush. We took the deadfall away from the cabins. We did as much as we possibly could to mitigate whatever damages, whatever there was. Then the pine beetle came along, and we've been cutting down trees within whatever within the government's guidelines,
mm-hmm.
Which are usually from middle of September to the end of April.
Mm-hmm.
So we did Fire Smart, except for last year when. I'm hearsay because I wasn't there, because I like to do Fire Smart. It gives me a chance to meet the neighbors, and you work your ass off. It's not just something you sit around and play about. You go there, and there's a project to be done, and it's got to be done, and you have to do it in a day. And it's not going around the lake. It's just a certain area. Anyway, the end of the day is. Last year they weren't able to do the Fire Smart for some bureaucratic reason with parks, which I'm not aware of, but I'm not going to belabor that point. Fire Smart's been done in Jasper at the Lake Edith. I think we started it, and that's how come we got to be where it is. And that's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the warden's name, and it'll come to me, but then we'll have to hang up.
Well, that's okay. So, that's okay. Well, Phil, I hope you get good news about your cabin. I really do, and I appreciate you calling us today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very kindly.
That's Phil in Edmonton. Our next caller is Rochelle, and she is also calling us from Edmonton. Good afternoon.
Hi there. Good afternoon.
Thank you for calling. What's your connection to Jasper?
My connection to Jasper, I'm first generation.
I think we might have just lost Did we just lose Rochelle? Yes, we did. Okay, so try to call us back, Rochelle, and we'll try to get you back on. I think the line just dropped. Let's go to Blaine in Calgary. Hi, Blaine.
Hi.
Hi, and what are your thoughts about Jasper today?
Well, let me see. I went to Jasper when I was a little wee fella, probably about 6 or 8 years old, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it, all the different things out there. But there was a whirlpool, and I can't remember the name of it, and I'm thinking that historian you got might be able to shed some light on it and what the name of the place is, because I heard a lot of the bridges got damaged, and I wonder if that suspension bridge over the whirlpool got wiped out.
Well, let me ask him right now. Ian, do you know the name of the whirlpool that Blaine's talking about?
The whirlpool is a tributary of the Athabasca, and the fur trade route went up it to Athabasca Pass because there's no glacier at the top of that pass. And the whirlpool got its name as a river because there was a dangerous whirlpool at the confluence with the Athabasca. So in fact, the fur traders avoided that part of the river and went through the woods on a portage in order to continue on up to Athabasca Pass.
And I guess you wouldn't have any information on whether the structures that supported the whirlpool would have survived the fire.
There was a suspension bridge that was wiped out several years ago on the middle whirlpool that trail up to Athabasca Pass needed, and that was not replaced by Parks Canada. But whether the road bridge on Highway 93A was impacted, I'm in the dark like everyone else.
Yeah, sorry, Blaine, we can't provide more information on whether that bridge survived. I know that one of the notes I saw said there had been some bridge damage, so it's unknown, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, it was really something to see that whirlpool. I mean, it's not something that you come across being a prairie person, right? So when you see a whirlpool like that, it's quite something.
Yeah, no, for sure. Really appreciate you calling us, Blaine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Now, Ian, we just heard from an owner of one of the cabins in Jasper, and he mentioned that his family had owned that cabin since 1945. How far back does that kind of Jasper as cottage country go back?
Oh, that has a long lineage, yes. It's a century old, and it began to arise on Lake Edith and to some extent Lake Annette almost about the same time as Jasper Park Lodge was established, which in its first form occurred at the end of in the middle teens of the second decade of the 20th century. So yes, that's of long standing. And of course, Jasperites love to use the beaches on the lakes, and that's the swimming hole, as it were, for the town.
Now, you earlier told us about a royal visit to Jasper. I understand some Hollywood celebrities have also spent some time there. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Every summer when the golf championship was held, for about 10 years, it attracted Bing Crosby, who loved coming up. But in 1953, Otto Preminger made part of his movie, some was in Banff, part of his movie near the Snake Indian River, a confluence downstream from Jasper, Snake Indian and the Athabasca. And people who know their films better than I do will know that that's River of No Return starred Marilyn Monroe and Rory Calhoun, Robert Mitchum. And one of the stories about that's really interesting is that Marilyn hated traveling backwards in a train car. So every morning when the train went downriver to the shoot site, she was fine, but she demanded that a barber's chair be put in her car so that she could swivel it in the other direction for the return trip. And the kids in Jasper who knew about this and also thought that Marilyn looked prettiest when she was furious would change the direction of the chair while she was out shooting a scene during the day. And she would come back at the end of the day, hot and tired and bothered, and see that the chair faced the wrong direction and explode. And this to great glee from the Urshins that were, of course, hiding down in the ditch beside the train track.
And how long would she have been there? Was it a long shoot?
It was a long enough shoot that because Jasper was not yet served by telephone, it incurred the wrath of Joe DiMaggio, who left New York to come up and find out what she was up to.
Oh, he couldn't get her to pick up the phone.
There was no phone to pick up. Not yet, not in 1953. Several weeks, actually, yeah.
So hopefully everything was okay. He didn't find her hooked up with Bing Crosby out at the golf course.
You know, I haven't pursued the history sufficiently to be able to answer that question.
My guest for this entire hour is historian Ian McLaren, and we are talking about the history of Jasper. We've been asking you to call and write with your thoughts as well, particularly if you've got some connections to the area. And we do have another caller standing by now. It's Valerie, and she's calling us from Little Pine First Nation in Saskatchewan. Hi, Valerie.
Hi.
Hi, thanks for calling. Thanks for calling.
Yes, I've been listening to CBC Edmonton to hear you. It's not on CBC Saskatoon right now, but yes, I was born in Medicine Hat, and when I went to university in Edmonton, U of A, I had a summer job at Overlander Lodge, and we did go from there to Overlander to Jasper, and we met other students, and I met a family that had a cabin on Lake Edith, and I became close friends to them. So I did go back there a number of summers, and in the spring when they opened, or we were there in the fall when they closed, and have marvelous memories of that time. I have a nephew who has a business, a tourist business in Jasper, and lives there. He's lived there a number of decades. I'm trying to get a hold of them and find out. I'm assuming that they left, and he may know more about his situation than I do at this point. Of course, he's a lot younger than I am. I'm 79. But yes, and I brought my grandchildren, my Nosimsuk, my Cree grandchildren, to Jasper a number of times in the summer to camp and hike around. When I was much younger and I met the family from Lake Edith, they had stories of the doctor next door. They were doctors too, but the doctor in a cabin in the same area who had hiked from Jasper across to either Lake Louise or to Banff, but they were very much environmentalists, loved the landscape, loved hiking, great distances. It's a beautiful place. It's so beautiful because it's not as it hasn't become this huge city like Banff. I mean, I shouldn't be comparing, but that's what we love about Jasper. And it's sad what's happening, but as other callers have said, it was necessary to clean the earth, and unfortunately, it had to do it the way it did.
Valerie,
good memories.
I'm so glad you called in with your memories, Valerie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and have a good day.
Yes, you too. Ian, I'd like to wrap this up by asking you for your thoughts about Jasper's recovery. I don't know if it's too soon to know exactly what's going to happen, but where do you think it should be going?
Just before answering that, I'll mention that I've received a photo showing that the Museum and Archives has survived.
Oh, that's good news.
Yeah, sure is. I'm not a planner. I'm an historian. I think the town was as big as it could be, and I'm glad it wasn't bigger. I don't know where this will go, whether people returning there will find even the structures that weren't burnt uninhabitable for one reason or another. And it's going to take a concerted effort over a number of years. Sadly, Albertans know this experience from Fort McMurray, British Columbians from Lytton. We've had so many summer fires almost regularly in the last few years that have impacted settled areas that we're going to have to get used to the fact. And this terrible funereal sight of a line of vehicles snaking its way out of an endangered residential area is sticking with us, and we've got to address the fact that we're living with fire in a way that humans haven't had to before, and that will have to guide the planning in terms of the rehabilitation, both of the park and of the town.
Ian, once again, thank you so much for spending this hour with us, with sharing your expertise and your stories. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's been my pleasure, Jim, and my best wishes to Jasperites, both those I know and those I don't. It's a wonderful town, and it's got a great sense of community. I'm so sorry.
All right. We appreciate that. Ian McLaren, Professor Emeritus of History at the University of Alberta, who has written extensively on the history of Jasper National Park. You're listening to special programming dedicated to the fire situation in Jasper. I'm Jim Brown, and right after we break for the news, we will come back because we want to bring you a briefing that Premier Danielle Smith and the Federal Emergency Preparedness Minister Harjit Sajjan will be providing to reporters outside the Crisis Center in Hinton. So stay with us for that. It's 1 o'clock, time for the CBC News with Kenny Mason.
This is CBC News Alberta. It is 13 degrees in Jasper at 1 o'clock. Good afternoon from Calgary. I'm Kenny Mason. Weather has finally been helping crews in Jasper battling wildfires today, but the damage so far is staggering. Significant parts of the town are charred, with some buildings burned to the ground. The CBC's Sam Sampson is just outside the fire zone in Hinton.
You can't get very close to Jasper National Park at all, never mind the town itself. It's still not a safe situation. But let's take a look at the damage inside the town of Jasper. Parks Canada said most of the damage was on the west side, specifically southwest of Miette Avenue. And then they said the east side of town seemed to be spared significant damage. That doesn't mean that there's no damage at all, but just that the worst is on more the south side of the area. We take a look at the fire that's still affecting the national park. Parks Canada just released a preliminary map saying that the fire is now 36,000 hectares. Initially, there were 2 fires threatening the town. Those merged together, actually, and now we're looking at a complex of fires. We don't know still how many exactly structures have been damaged or burned down. Parks Canada says it's too early at this time to really get an exact number, so we're still standing by for that information.
That's the CBC's Sam Sampson reporting near Jasper National Park. Premier Danielle Smith is set to tour Jasper to see firsthand the devastation. Smith is also expected to give an update on those firefighting efforts. Cool, wet weather overnight has helped crews, but the weekend forecast is set for the heat to return. Wildfires menacing the town flared up into towering walls of flame Wednesday night, breaching defenses and destroying homes and businesses. Critical infrastructure, including schools and the hospital, remain intact. About 25,000 people had to flee Jasper National Park ahead of the fires, including about 5,000 residents of the town. Soldiers from CFB Shiloh are now on their way to Alberta to help with the wildfires. About 90 soldiers from the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry are expected to be based in the Jasper region. Major Devin Crux says the soldiers will help in whatever way they can.
We were activated yesterday evening. So our recce party left Thursday morning to get eyes on the ground. And the rest of us back here activated our fan outs and made sure that we were ready to go when the call came. It's a tragedy for the Canadians involved, and we are, as part of the military, we're here to support.
This is the first time this year the soldiers from Shiloh have been deployed to help with forest fires. Canadian National Railway says it has restarted rail shipments through Jasper National Park. Canada's largest railroad operator suspended operations in the area and Wednesday afternoon as the wildfires raged through. The halt had Canadian ports prepared for a slowdown in the movement of goods, as Jasper is located along one of the country's key supply chain corridors. Calgary company Earthware Reusables is hosting the first ever citywide bottle drive drive this weekend with the goal of collecting donations to help the Calgary Food Bank support evacuees from Jasper. Patrina Driscoll is the marketing director for the Takeout Container Company. She says their goal is to help ease the food bank's load.
There's already a strain on the Calgary Food Bank system because of all the need in the city. And now with the Jasper evacuees, we're finding that there's even more of a strain. So Calgarians, I know, will rise to the occasion. You know, we love our province, and I know that Calgarians will step up and, just by bringing bottles and cans, that is almost like free money. It's in your garage just sitting there. So this is great timing to be able to bring that in now and donate in that way.
The bottle drive runs this Saturday and Sunday. Calgarians can bring their refundables to any local bottle depot and ask to donate the funds to the Calgary Food Bank. Across the province, there are several places where you can donate, including the Canadian Red Cross. Northwest of Calgary, there's another out-of-control wildfire, though this one has not caused anywhere near the damage. The MD of Bighorn has declared a state of local emergency. The out-of-control fire is burning west of Water Valley. There is a reception center at the Water Valley Community Hall. And for the first time since 2019, crime is up in Lethbridge. This is according to Statistics Canada's latest crime severity index for 2023. CBC's Osei Arete has that story.
Do we have a safe community? We have a safe community.
Mayor Blaine Higgins says he's optimistic, despite a 7% increase in Lethbridge's crime severity index.
But seeing numbers like this makes us think of, what can we do better to serve our community?
CSI gives communities a rating per 100,000 people based on the volume and severity of crimes in the area. Deputy Police Chief Gerald Grobmeyer says last year was an anomaly.
We are on track to end 2024 with the lowest CSI levels that we've had in the past 5 years.
Grobmeyer says most of the crime that led to the increase in last year's numbers happened within the first 4 months. Why?
The influx of people downtown, higher than we had seen in previous years. We were still also struggling a little bit with manpower.
He says Lethbridge police now use data analytics to figure out where resources are most needed, and LPS have hired 26 new officers this year. Grobmeyer says LPS will continue working with agencies to tackle root causes of crime like addiction. Osei Arete, CBC News, Lethbridge.
6 more people were arrested in Edmonton yesterday in connection with a rash of extortions targeting the South Asian community. Although police have already identified an apartment fire in the city's southwest this morning as part of their investigation, police say youths are being recruited and paid to commit the crimes. Edmonton Police Chief Dale McPhee promises those responsible will be held accountable.
It's not just the individuals or the people that are affected by a fire or an extortion, but it scares the whole community because you just don't know where they are, and it's time for that to stop. And, I think we're serving notice here today. We're coming.
Law enforcement says it has identified the man believed to be the leader of the organization orchestrating the scheme. His name is Maninder Singh Dhaliwal, who's 34. A Canada-wide arrest warrant has been issued. That is your update from the CBC Alberta newsrooms. Jim.
Thank you very much, Kenny. That's Kenny Mason with the news. We are continuing with our special programming dedicated to the wildfire situation in Jasper. I'm Jim Brown, and I've just received an update from Parks Canada with some more information about the damage in the Jasper town site. The update says that assessments of infrastructure damages is ongoing. The damage within the town site is estimated at around 30%. Out of a total of 1,113 structures within the town, 358 have been destroyed. All critical infrastructure in Jasper was successfully protected, including the hospital, the emergency services building, both elementary and senior schools, the activity center, and the wastewater treatment plant. Now, all of that last information we knew, but that more specific estimate of the number of structures that had been damaged, that is new information. So once again, the Parks Canada estimate is that 30% of the structures in Jasper have been damaged. We will be taking you to a news briefing with Premier Danielle Smith and the Federal Emergency Preparedness Minister Harjit Sajjan very shortly. That's happening at the command center in Hinton. I'm just looking at a video feed from that now, and it doesn't look like they're ready to start talking yet, but someone who is ready to start talking is CBC reporter Michelle Bellefontaine. She is in Hinton, and she joins me now. Good afternoon, Michelle.
Hello there.
Thank you for joining us. Now, what's the latest you can give us on the situation today?
Well, I am following at the moment Premier Danielle Smith's comings and goings. she earlier, as you said, she's now at the Hinton Training Center. She arrived here about maybe 20 minutes to 30 minutes ago. And so she's inside right now, along with the federal minister, Harjit Sajjan, Mike Ellis, who's the provincial minister of Public and Emergency Services, and Todd Lowen, who is the Forestry and Parks minister. So they're inside the building right now. When she comes out, she is expected to hold a news conference, as you indicated. Earlier this morning, she was at the command center, which is set up at a hotel in Hinton. It's quite impressive when you see, like, you've got this huge trailer from the Calgary Emergency Management Agency, along with one from the Alberta Management Agency. So they're set up there. And, there's all kinds of different vans, from Parks Canada. We've seen people here from the Canadian Armed Forces that have arrived. I saw a man who is from Health Canada. He's with their mental health services unit. So a lot of people are converging on Hinton right now. But
and it looks like, Michelle, it looks like a lot of people are converging on the microphones in front of the training center as well.
Okay.
So I appreciate this. I'm just going to throw now to Premier Danielle Smith addressing the media in Hinton.
And of course, you can see it as well. Rain and cooler temperatures and the incredibly hard work of firefighters have resulted in fire activity that is significantly subdued. However, it is important to note that the fire is still out of control and it remains unsafe for people to return. There'll be some we can't have unlimited re-entry into the park at this time. And I do want to express deep gratitude to the brave men and women currently on the ground in Jasper who are working tirelessly to save as much as they can. We met with a number of the crew who were on the first few days who were fighting, even though in the case of some of them they lost their own homes. So there is now a change in the incident command, and they're going to continue on with that work. So thanks to everyone for their bravery, for their commitment to keeping Albertans safe,